Yeah, it's amazing the changes that have gone through. I tell people about growing up where we didn't have phones. There's a whole generation of people that are growing up now that don't know what it's like to be bored. They've always got something they go to a doctor's appointment and they wait 20 minutes. They don't mind anymore because they've got this device and the time just goes by. And so
Exactly.
it is, I think some people are just not in their head anymore like they used to. I can.
Hello, I'm John Brink, and we are podcasting on the Brink from downtown Prince George, British Columbia, Canada. And for all those people watching us from around the world, they say, well, we know where Canada is, and we know where British Columbia is on the west coast, right? Right. And then we know the big city there, Vancouver. So where is Prince George? Well, we are 500 miles north of Vancouver, or for our guests and our friends in Europe, 800 kilometers, which puts us physically in the center of British Columbia, north, south, east, west. It's a smaller community. It's about 80,000 people. Lots of nature all around us, within 50 miles, 100 lakes, lots of timber, lots of trees, lots of nature, black bears, grizzly bears, caribou, deer, you name it, we have it here, living in harmony with nature. So, and Mickie, between you and me, don't tell too many people about it, otherwise they all want to come here. Our guest today is Mickie Kennedy, and Mickie is a very interesting individual, does a lot of podcasting, is an author, businessman, and has a lot of experience in a whole lot of different areas. Mickie, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Tell us about a bit about yourself, because you're very, very active in a lot of areas. Tell us a little bit about where you're from originally, and how did you go through your educational period, and how did you end up being where you are today?
Sure. So I grew up in eastern North Carolina, very rural area, and I ended up going to college in North Carolina and then went to graduate school in Northern Virginia at George Mason University, where I got a Master's of Fine Arts in Creative Writing with an emphasis in poetry. And my game plan was to be a poet and would probably wait tables my whole life. And so I did that for a summer after graduating and realized it takes a lot on your joints to stand on concrete for 10-hour days. And
Exactly.
I couldn't do it. So at the end of the summer, I decided I was going to look for a safe office job. And I got hired at a telecom research startup in Washington, D.C. nearby. And I was employee number 3. So I had to
Wow.
do a lot of stuff, a lot of sales, but they also said, since you have writing background, write press releases, and here's the Rolodex that we use to fax these. And so the owner of the company was a telecom attorney, and he had previously sent press releases by fax, and he said, "Don't worry, nothing ever happens, but we believe if we send them out, maybe someday it will." And so I did that for a while and then realized that nothing was happening. And I just felt like there's got to be more to this. And so we, I was instructed to take our tables when we came out with new regions. And we had just come out with telecom data for the Caribbean, inbound and outbound traffic to the United States. So we put together that in a press release and sent it out. And I looked at what journalists were writing, and I said, journalists aren't writing tables anywhere. You're not seeing tables of data. We got to give them more than that. We got to give them the elements to build a story. And I noticed that journalists like a story arc. So first thing I did was I looked at that table and I noticed that one country had way more inbound and outbound traffic to the United States than all the others. And when I researched it, I found out it was because it was a call center for 1-900 numbers. And at the time, those were very popular. And this was a call center off the coast of the U.S., and they were routing traffic through to this country. And so I rewrote the press release focusing on that aspect of it. And when I sent that one out by fax, it got picked up by The Economist, the Financial Times, the Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, and 3 telecom trade publications.
Whoa.
And so everybody was like, "Whoa, what did you do here?" And the phone was ringing, sales were coming in, and I just continued to do press releases where I tried to find a story. And the data's still there, but the data's like just a little nugget. It's the story that's the important thing.
Exactly.
And so I fleshed those out. I even looked at trends year over year, and I noticed that in some countries that are not very industrialized, if they experienced a 10% or more telecom growth to and from the United States, it was often found that they would have economic growth about 3 years later.
Right.
And so when we did that press release and got Investors Business Journal and Barron's, we started getting orders from a whole new customer base. Before, it was always telecom companies or telecom attorneys or telecom analysts buying us. And all of a sudden, we were being bought by hedge funds and investment types people who were looking for an edge as to what country might be up and coming. And so it really grew the business. When I started, we were selling this data yearly in a printed form for $600. And last time I checked, I think it starts now electronically. You have access to it, and I think it starts at like 20 some to $30,000. So they have definitely gone up in price because they recognize that they are the only place that has this data, and then secondly, they have such a stellar reputation in the telecom world. They really stand out for the data that they produce, and so I was captivated with PR after that, press releases specifically, and I wanted to start a business, and it was just in the back of my mind. But as I was faxing, I was getting more and more calls from journalists saying, "Hey, in the future, could you email these to me?" And that was the light bulb moment when I just realized I can email these guys so much easier than faxing. If you've ever had to program a fax machine and then listen to it screech all day, that's
Oh my
it,
God.
it's
Yeah.
it's it's a it's a terrible thing.
Yeah.
And so I spent about a year just networking with journalists, mostly on bulletin boards, which were popular at the time, hangouts and stuff like that. And I had almost 10,000 journalists when I launched in October of 1998. And I started just being a matchmaker, sending out releases to these journalists. And over the years, PR Newswire liked what we were doing and said, "Hey, we'd love to support you somehow. Maybe you could add a local distribution or a city or state distribution." And I just really pushed back and said, "I'd like to give all of my customers a national distribution." And they thought I was crazy because they charged $1,600 to move a press release nationally over PR Newswire. And eventually they relented. We found some commonalities, and the fact that they have an overnight editorial team that doesn't do much, but they have to be there in case there's breaking news or someone needs to get something to the Asian markets. And I just said, I'll start scheduling my releases for next business day. You can set them up overnight, so there's no additional labor costs for you. And so it's worked out now. We've been working with them for, I think, over 12 years or so. And every release that goes out through us gets a national distribution through them. And you don't have to pay $1,600. We're probably about a third to maybe half the price of what it would cost to go directly through them. So it's a really good value for startups and entrepreneurs and individuals like authors and speakers and people like that as well. So and I'm continuing to push education because so many people are doing the same type of press release and then wondering why nothing's happening.
Yeah. So the key with you is that partially because of your background and your training that you got, you recognized through circumstances following that, working for others, starting in the company with 3 employees, dealing with data and information, that from there on in, you not only recognized it, but you were ahead of information, of data and media. And so what I find exciting about it, Mickie, is that I'm a little bit older than you likely. I was born in 1940. I'm going to be 84 November the 1st. but I've seen it all evolve from, I came to Canada in 1965, July 1965 is nothing, dreaming to build a lumber mill. It was a suitcase, 3 books, 2 sets of clothes, and by the time I got off the bus, they said, go to British Columbia, that's where all the trees are. I did. Then I came to Vancouver, went to the immigration office, couldn't speak English, didn't know a soul, didn't have a job. And fortunately, there was a German fellow working there. I could speak some German. And I told him I wanted to build a lumber mill. He said, go to Prince George. That's where they're building all the lumber mills and all of those kind of things. So I did that, came off the bus here in Prince George. I can still see it here 60 years ago. With my suitcase, 3 books, and 2 sets of clothes. And I counted my money at least 3 times. I had exactly $25.74 and 47 cents. And so, but what I had lots of is attitude. I'm always, no matter what, how tough it is, I always know tomorrow is going to be better. And I avoid negative. Passion, whatever I do, I give it 125%. And then work ethic, I work harder than anybody. And even now still, at 84, I usually get up at 5:30 in the morning. And I always think I'm late, and I always make my bed. And I even now, after being here for 60 years, I started a company 50 years ago, so we have, it's not about hurrah, John, and how well he did, but just for background, I have about 10 companies. I do have a lumber company, and I became an author. I'm a speaker and do a lot of those kind of things. And obviously, I love podcasting because that, or let me go back a little bit again. So the first communication that I sent to my parents in 1965, telegram. Hi, I'm doing okay. I'm healthy. I got a job. I'm making $2 an hour. Send me a job. Send me some more money. And I looked at that as a career. That was then in 65. Now, I can pick up my iPhone, one push on the button, and I talk to anybody around the world virtually, just like that. And at the same time, I look at the media, and especially podcasting, and then, there you and me are sitting here talking to each other from, and I'm on this side of North America, you're on the opposite side, and it feels like you're sitting with me on my couch, interacting about things that we have in common, and podcasting around the world. And so it is unbelievable, and all of a sudden, relatively new. 4 or 5 years ago, I was blogging, and then we started podcasting locally, more or less, and then COVID came, and then we wanted to do more, but we were working with a local television station. We couldn't do that anymore because they had COVID restrictions, and so I had this apartment. I said, let's turn it into a studio. And then looking at some of the news media, CNN, ABC, and all the other ones, they are on television. You have people from all over the world, 1, 2, 3, all talking together and saying, well, maybe that's what we should do, is go virtual with our podcasting. And we started doing that. And now today, here we're sitting, podcasting around the world, from Australia to Greece and you name it, wherever, and we are podcasting, and it's still only at the beginning in my mind, and so it's amazing. And then the other part, again, looking from my perspective, coming all the way from telegrams that I sent to my parents, that there are immense opportunities in terms of data. And data is so powerful. And then in terms of media and podcasting and the platforms around it, and then add to all of that AI, which I believe will further change the world. And all of the things that are happening to me, the old fella at 84 that is trying to keep up, but I'm doing pretty good for 84. and still doing podcasting, still have an iPhone, I still use my computer, and I'm enjoying it, and it's still going further. Gives you a bit of a background on me.
Yeah, it's amazing the changes that have gone through. I tell people about growing up where we didn't have phones. There's a whole generation of people that are growing up now that don't know what it's like to be bored. They've always got something they go to a doctor's appointment and they wait 20 minutes. They don't mind anymore because they've got this device and the time just goes by, and so
Exactly.
it is, I think some people are just not in their head anymore like they used to. I think good old fashioned boredom created a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of really fantastical thinkers that are out there, and I do fear a little bit for our younger people because of that.
Exactly. So data is becoming the foundation, right? Having information, and then the other part that I believe are critically important is communication skills, the modern communication skills, not the older ones where you had newspaper, even the news media, television, and all of those things is old media. We're moving now into the new media, like where you and me are podcasting here about current realities, and then by tomorrow morning we'll share it with people around the world, and probably tens of thousands of people will watch us interacting. And that's the platform where we will go. The same with AI. I'm not afraid of AI. I think it will change communications around the world, make it much more effective, much more instant, and it will change again the world in terms of communications. Would you agree?
Definitely, I agree completely. I think that communication is in flux. I think old communication, newspapers and places like that are having challenges, but I think a lot of them are getting online. And, the ones that are going to do well are those that embrace going online. Um, Probably some of the first to incorporate video, because I think that that's a natural evolution that people are naturally liking shorter videos and preferring to get their news that way rather than just a lot of text or even long stories or a TV broadcast. They like the variety of short form, and I think that it's a big opportunity, especially for PR. I see people using press releases in this new media. A lot of Instagram influencers are really big in fashion, and they rely on these press releases as soon as they break and the company releases them for them to share the photos and videos of fashion brands to their audiences and stuff like that. And it gives them the perception that they have, they know right when it comes out because it's like breaking news. And I follow a guy on TikTok called Snackalator, who does a weekly roundup of new snacks hitting grocery store shelves. And he posts the picture and he says, "Hey, I can't tell if this is a glaze, but this is the photo that came with the press release that they issued on the wire." So it's great to see this new media evolving and utilizing press releases and stuff like that, which tells me that PR, or at least press releases, aren't dead yet. And I think they'll continue to evolve. I think that we're beginning to see the incorporation of video with press releases, and I think that maybe in 5 years' time or sooner, we could see, you know, the predominant press release is a video press release where you incorporate B-roll and other types of materials and you package it in a video format. And I think it's an exciting time. I love change. I love pivoting as things change. I started my business emailing, and I would never be able to email journalists today because media databases has destroyed the inbox for journalists.
Exactly.
Most journalists can't control their inbox because there's so many off-targeted press releases. And if you're a golf company who sells golf clubs and you bought a license, a $15,000 database for a year, and you only have 1,200 golf contacts in it, you're sitting there looking at these many others and saying, hey, bankers and business people buy golf clubs. So let's send it to financial analysts and banking type journalists. And they're never going to cover golf clubs, but you've just cluttered their inbox. And there's all these different people doing the same approach in all different industries. And it's made the inbox just chaos. And hopefully AI or something will evolve to be able to better filter that stuff. But for now, a lot of journalists are whitelisting people they have relationships with, and really relying on the spam filters that are available out there, but they're not perfect, especially when it comes to press releases and things like that. So it is a very imperfect time, but I think that technology will continue to evolve and solve a lot of these issues.
So the way I look at that, Mickie, though, people like you look at this as an opportunity for change that does exactly what you were saying, is that it is buried in information, so it needs that thing that you already went through several times, where all of a sudden you make sure that it makes a lot more sense and is a lot more directed at the market that you're trying to access, and AI likely will be part of that in some form or fashion. But it is a huge opportunity, because the market is getting bigger all the time. That I look at ourselves when I started podcasting here in Prince George, way up in northern British Columbia, sitting on the couch with very interesting persons from around the Prince George region. And now today we are podcasting around the globe, and we the top 1% podcasters around the globe, where tens of thousands of people are interacting with us. And at the same time, we have guests like yourself that also are interacting with tens of thousands of people around the globe, interacting. And it is so immensely powerful. So then it becomes a question, how do you become more effective, that it doesn't become like the inboxes, and email, but how can you be more directive? So one of the things that, just bouncing this by you, that I've been working on at 84 nearly, I want to set up a platform globally. And so we're going to do that in the next 2 or 3 months, launch it and more to a selective market, but still very effective globally. So, and again, using all the new technology and all the things that we're doing. And you can do that from Prince George, British Columbia, or from the little town in Greece, just 120 kilometers south of Athens. I don't know what it is, but hypothetically speaking.
Yeah, it really is an amazing time. I started my business in my home and then moved to office space as I added staff, and now most of the staff are working from home because they prefer that. The pandemic sent people back home and got rid of a lot of the stigma of working at home, and I think that it's exciting because people are able to do everything they need with these amazing computers that they have on their desk, as their laptops, these phones. It's a very exciting time, and the options and where we go from here it just seems like sky is the limit.
And then just a couple of days ago, I just got a new iPhone. I'm into, even at an old days, I'm into technicality. So I got the new iPhone 16, I think, and it's amazing what it will do. There you got this little iPhone. It would take this whole room full of computers 20 years ago, 25 years ago. It's all in this little package, and I can do everything from my iPhone once I figured it all out. But, it's so immensely powerful.
Yeah.
Now, the other thing, you're also obviously an author, and at a late age, I became an author as well. I've done 4 books, and then I'm working on 2 other ones. The one comes out in April and another one in June. And the one that comes out in June actually is about communications and the new versus the old communications. And then the one that I just put out is one that that you may find interesting. Is that is I'm into health and fitness. Although I'm 84 years young, I call it. It is not about age and the number. It's quality of life that is important. So I wrote this book about living young, dying old. And that's a picture of me on the front, actually. I'm also the oldest competitive bodybuilder in North America. The qualified for the Arnold's actually in 2018, but then COVID came, and so then now again I'm training for becoming, or again going to the Arnold's in 2025, and I'm 85. Which makes me, I look like this, and I'm still training very hard after this podcast. I'm going off to the gym, working hard, and stay in shape and mentally, physically, and diet. And that's what that book is all about. But I wrote another 4. Writing books is not easy, and it took me till about 5 years ago, when I was in my late 70s, that I started to, people said to me, you had such an interesting life, you should write a book about it. And so for 20 years, I tried to start, stop. And then I knew if I didn't do it now, it would not happen. So I started to write a book against all odds, not about who successful John is, but about all the ups and downs around the way. So it took me 80 years to live it, 20 years to think about it, 2 years to write it. And so that was the first one. And then I wrote a number of other books in between, but I love writing. And although my training wasn't in that area, but I love it, and it works for me. And then so maybe talk to us about you as an author, because I believe that books are becoming much more popular now than they were before COVID. Is that a correct observation that I'm making?
Yeah, I think that a lot of people are recognizing that books are a very strong signal to people in your industry about you as a professional and as an expert. And people gravitate towards people who are experts, and people who have some thought leadership in an industry. So I think for that reason, there's a whole group of people who are working on writing books and offering them. It's sort of like the high tech, low tech calling card or business card, where um, you know uh, am I hiring the right person to you know help me with this? Well, they've written a book about it, and so their credentials are there. It's a lot of credibility. It makes us really excited to work with them. We read it, and we glean little nuggets, but we also look towards them as well. And for me, I wrote a book, originally probably over 15 years ago, about writing the perfect press release, and it went into all the different formats and style and stuff like that. And uh, it did really well. A lot of universities teach it. I actually make the PDF available to them for free, rather than the kids having to buy the book. But I priced the book as cheaply as I could, so that it would still be available in international markets. And my goal isn't to make money from selling the book, but to basically introduce me and my company, while also instilling a lot of knowledge about press releases. The second book that I wrote is a bit smaller, and it's more about strategies. I've recognized that over the years, uh, you know, those who succeed with PR and press releases aren't those who write the best press release, but those who write with the most newsworthy subject. And what are the strategies that work? There's a lot of people who've said for 25 plus years since I've been doing this that press releases are dead and they don't work. And I move 10,000 plus releases a year for my clients. And I would say a lot of that's true. 97% of press releases that get issued by me, by others who use the newswire, they look at what everybody else is doing and they write their version of that press release. And they're not really thinking strategically, like I did when I was like, hey, what is missing here that the journalists want? And I knew that it was the story arc. And the story arc can help you certainly succeed, especially if you're doing a product launch, because so many times it's just here's the product and here's a list of features, and a journalist can't do anything with that. But if you put a use case study in there, someone who used your product, beta tested it, what their the outcome was with them, having a quote by them about the experience of working with your product or solution, and so all of that is extremely useful. And that strategy is what was in my second book and what the focus of it is. And I continue to do this education over podcast. I have a free masterclass that I make available to my customers as well as anybody else who's interested. And it's changed. I recognize that people don't have the attention span to watch a 12-hour class anymore. It used to be you had to do video and many, many hours. So I condensed mine to less than an hour long video because people weren't finishing it. And so I think that you have to adapt how people consume, and the same thing with books. And I think that's why my second book is so much smaller, and it's meant to be a quick start guide to get people up and running. And
Have you got the book there, Mickie? Have you got the book there so you can show it to us?
I do. I have to just go grab it off my shelf. I'll be right back.
Go get it.
So the first book that's a bit thicker is the Beginner's Guide to Powerful Press Releases.
Is that available at all the traditional ones, Amazon, on and on and on?
Yeah, it is available on Amazon and should be available in others as well.
Show it to us once more,
sure,
because they didn't get a good look at it. Okay, yeah, I love it. Yeah. Okay.
And I made it available on Kindle for free. And usually Amazon only lets you do that for a short period of time, but there's a trick to it that they will
also
make it.
Audio?
It is not available for audio. It's because it's so template driven.
Right.
You kind of need to be able to look at it and see the different things. And then this one is the smaller one, the PR Strategy Manifesto, that talks more about strategy and
Love it.
working on what is a newsworthy press release and what are the 3% of press releases that do get picked up.
Right.
And I tell people, basically, this is the equivalent of my master class. And if anyone's interested, that class is at eReleases.com/plan, PLAN, and completely free. But basically, it walks through the 3% of press releases that do get picked up and the patterns that exist there. And, one thing that you can do is do a industry survey, survey your industry, you doing it as the author makes you the subject of the article, and it will elevate you to, again, a really strong thought leadership position in your industry by you doing a survey and issuing the results over the newswire. And you don't have to have a big Rolodex of people in your industry either. All you need to do is build out the survey, asking really timely questions right now. Post-pandemic, is work culture an issue? Is your industry being affected by AI? What are people's perceptions of that? And any other specific questions in regards to your industry in particular. And you take that link and just approach a smaller independent trade association that represents people in your industry. And there are many out there. Stay away from the large ones. You want to go to the smaller and more independent ones, but find ones that their membership represents you, like who you are. And
I find that very interesting, Mickie, because by accident more than anything likely, I kind of got into that. I am a very successful podcaster, but then also I'm in the forest industry, and there are some issues in the forest industry that I like to share with the public. So in the forest industry in British Columbia is in crisis right now, in my opinion. So I podcast BC forest industry in crisis, immensely successful in terms of getting, and it's a solo that I do to get a message out there. We did a couple here a week ago or so, already 500,000 views in British Columbia and in other places. Immensely powerful, and I'm doing more of those where I have one particular issue that I use myself as a solo to project it to the world for all intents and purposes, but mainly to bring a message across. And I do that with my books. I'm a storyteller more than anything. And then one of the books that I did, I have to give you a little bit more background about me, is that I was born in Holland in 1940, and academically I was not a success story. I failed grade 3 and I failed grade 7 3 times, and so then they said, what are we going to do with this guy? And they said to my parents, well, send him to the school of the mentally challenged persons. They said, no, we're not going to do that. So what we should do with him is teach him a trade so he can work with his hands. And my grandfather was a master carpenter, and my dad worked in the lumber industry. And so they said at 13, send him down to the furniture factory, and then maybe we can make him a furniture maker. And so I loved it. And so I went there, and then in the evening I went to the college and became a furniture maker. But I had a dream that we were liberated during the Second World War by the Canadians. The Canadian Army liberated our part of Holland April the 12th, 1945. And I knew from there on forward that I would go to the land of my heroes, Canada. And so I did. I was going to go when I was 17, but my parents wouldn't let me then, and I was drafted into the Dutch Air Force for 2 years, and then I went to Canada when I was 23. And I didn't have confidence in myself, because all my friends that went to school with me, that went on to the college and the university, I became a laborer. I'm proud of that today, but then it was not kind of looked at from to being impressed. And so it took me quite a while until even here in Canada, I wanted to build a lumber mill and started with nothing from the ground up as a cleanup man and on and on and on. And fairly quickly I was the superintendent of one of the larger mills here. And then within 10 years I had my own company, Brink Forest Products, that is now the Brink group of companies. We have 10 companies and still growing. And then I started to come into my own, develop the confidence that I didn't have really, and started writing books about it. And so the other part, I picked up a book here that in Prince George, actually in January 1997, in a bookstore. Still don't know why I picked it up, but that changed my life actually. And the book's title was Driven to Distraction, written by Dr. Halliwell, medical doctor. And I opened the book and I started looking at it, and it's about ADHD. And I said, oh my God, that's me. And I wrote in the book, I already was here for 32 years. And I wrote in the book, now I finally know, in Dutch, now I finally know who I am. January 1997. And so The book was written by Dr. Halliwell in 1993. I picked it up in 1997. And then the more there was stigma attached to ADHD, and I started looking at Google and started to check it out more and more. And the more I looked at it, and obviously I was already successful in business, and everybody said, "You're so successful." I didn't feel that way. And then the more I read about it, the more I started realizing ADHD is a superpower. It is a superpower. So then I felt I had to share that with the rest of the world. So I wrote a book about it, ADHD Unlocked, and talking about my experience with ADHD. You can pick it up anywhere, go this direction or the other. It's always interesting. And so, and now I included a lot of times in presentations that I do. I may talk about entrepreneurship and other things, but I always put in a piece about ADHD because I feel so strongly about it, and I feel I have an obligation to talk about it because it affected my life for 50 years. From the time I was 13 and my friends were successful and I couldn't do normal school, obviously, then, and then became a laborer, started my life over again in Canada. And then it was not until I picked up this book when I was 57. It took me 5 years to go to my doc. That was a personal friend, delivered our 2 daughters, and when I was 62. And he said, "Hey, John, why are you here?" I said, "I think I got ADHD." And so we looked at it, and yes, I do. And so, but it changed my life. And so I feel now, that's why I wrote the book, that I have an obligation to talk about that. And I do that in my presentations a lot of times when I do presentations. I did one about 4 or 5 months ago, and a couple of hundred people. And a number of them said, "Yeah, I have it too, blah, blah, blah," that had not talked about it before. And others, by the time I'm done with my presentation, a lot of people in the room said, "Darn, I wish I had it too." It's a superpower. That's what I call it.
Yeah.
So just a bit of comment from you.
So I also have ADHD, and I think that that's probably one of the reasons that I did so well with my business. I was able to just, when you have this, you can just focus on something to the exclusion of anybody or anything, and it allows a very controlled focus, and it is, it is something that also I think comes with a lot of people who are more creative, tend to be more free thinkers, and not in the liberal standpoint or politically, but more in the like open to lots of new ideas, and taking stuff in, processing new data, new processes, new things like that. And so I think that it's helped me immensely as well.
So the other part about it, Mickie, I'm, amazing. I'm not surprised that you shared that with us. And the other thing that I did, your podcast number 320, I podcasted Dr. Halliwell on podcast number 203. On the Brink with John A. Brink, podcast 203, with Dr. Halliwell, who is a medical doctor, has written 18 books, is ADHD and has dyslexia. I do too. I'm ADHD and dyslexia. And so I podcasted him, and all the things that I had seen, and I suggested to him, he's the expert, not me, that I believe that it was initially thought that maybe 8% of the population ADHD, and then I thought it was more than that, more like 20%. I suggested that to Dr. Halliwell, and he said, "No, John, it is more than 25%. And I agree with them. The other thing that I suggested to him, I've been in business here for nearly 60 years and 50 years in my own business. I've been involved in associations and corporations and a lot of people that are trained and managing of different descriptions and all the other things that I believe that I suggested to Dr. Halliwell that 50% of them are ADHD. He said, no, John, 75%. I agree with him, of the successful ones. And the operative is successful ones. And so, so it was quite an experience. And I suggest to anybody that wants to watch my conversation with Dr. Halliwell, certainly recognized as globally as an expert in the field of ADHD, in particular, that it was a very, very interesting podcast. And I believe after that podcast that probably 1/3 of the population, 30% to 33% of the population, male, female, although females will show it differently than males necessarily, are likely ADHD globally. And so it is slowly being more and more recognized that our educational system is not effective usually in regards to people with either trauma, ADHD, or slow learners, or do not absorb the things that are not of interest to them necessarily at that moment. And so more of the education is now going in the direction of micro certification. The skill set that you require are the center, and the other things are secondary to that process. And so that creates more interest on the part of the individuals that are benefited from having ADHD. I don't look at it as a liability or a distraction. It's a benefit. And so, but a teaching and learning process still has to adopt, in my opinion.
Cool.
You agree?
I do. I do think that I think as a culture we've only been like in the modern era for probably a little over 100 years, and so I think it's going to take a little while for us to catch up with everything. And there's still a lot of I mean, it's amazing what we're still learning about the mind, about the nature of work, and even physically the body. You work out a lot because we now have these sedentary jobs, but yet we were created to move and to resist things and lift things. And so it is we're still having to fine tune what is healthy and what we should think and how we should view things. And uh, you know we have these systems set up like schools and education, and I think they have to be malleable to adapt to people who think differently, who experience differently. And I think we're making strides. And I think
Yeah.
that overall we're we're coming out of the dark ages, so be it, to accept that people process differently, people think differently. And it used to be that it's a disease, it's an ailment, it's something that's holding you back. But I think that there is strong evidence that we adapted as entrepreneurs into these little profitable areas that we created, because it fed, and we were able to serve our deficiency in a way that gave us an advantage over other people. And I do think that it is just a matter of adapting and changing. And I think that there'll continue to be discoveries made, and I think it's amazing. And I think that um, I do think we're fortunate to live in a time right now where technology is advancing, and I think our understanding of our place with interacting with technology is evolving as well.
And then the other part about it, Mickie, at least in my opinion, that's why I wrote this book. Living young, dying old. It is about the quality of life that is so critically important. I'm lucky. My wife is a vegetarian, And I didn't listen as well to her as I could have, should have. To a certain extent I did, until I nearly died when I was 58. I had a case of diverticulitis, which is a rupture of the colon in my particular case, which gives you about 48 hours before the toxins attacked your organs. And they took 20 centimeters out of my colon. And since the time I've been okay, but it sent me a message to start looking after your body and become more proactive. Before that, I was just like everybody else. Every year end, we make a commitment. We're going to do this, that, and then, and I'm going to buy a membership to a gym. And I do that for 2 weeks and then can find 100 reasons as to why I'm too busy. And so then I knew I had to change that, and I did. And I started to listen more to my wife. I became vegan. And I took that very, very serious. And after going to the gym for about 6 years with a trainer and giving it all that I got, somebody came up to us and said, "Have you ever thought about competing?" I said, "Me? Really?" And that's how I got into competing, and successfully, obviously. But the other part, the diet part, is that I became vegan 80-20. Now I'm probably closer to 90-10. And I do most of the shopping, even for my wife, is that if I go to a grocery store, I go to the outside because I don't want to go in the middle alleys where all the processed foods is, and I don't know what is in it. So we do mainly vegetable-based, organic, and so diet, again, extremely important. So for me, it's not overly complicated. Your body, you don't have to be a bodybuilder or an Olympian, but at least get exercise and then keep your body active. And then diet, don't eat garbage or stuff that you don't know really, and take care of your body and your mind. Physically stay active, mentally stay active. So I say sunshine, get lots of sleep, 7, 8, 9 hours a night, very, very important. Stay physically active, and diet. And and I know so many friends or people that I know, they are 50 years old and they say, "Man, I'm too old now." And if you decide that you can't do it, you won't do it. If you decide you can, and you don't have to become like me, a bodybuilder or whatever, but at least walk half an hour a day, or start with half an hour a day. Do it 3 days a week, and then try to improve it. And before you know it, somebody will come up to you and saying, "Hey, Peter, you look good. You lost weight," and then you're on the way. And then your diet, avoid the obvious, right? And everybody knows what the obvious are, and there is no reason that you cannot. Food tastes good, even if it is only healthy and not the other ones. And then your body is extremely forgiving, but it will only take so much abuse. And I'm not a doc. I don't give medical advice, but simply if you abuse it, then at some point, usually the last decade of your life, then you're going to live in misery, where then you get a handful of chemicals that are fighting all kinds of different problems that you have. And I say, try to be proactive, understand your body, understand what it needs. It's not overly complicated. And that's why I wrote the book about it.
Great.
So, Mickie, before we end the show, tell us more about what you're doing now, and obviously we agree on a lot of things in terms of the direction we go going forward. But I believe that this particular media has huge potential going forward. I want to go to the direction of a platform where I can talk not only about the issues that I have, ADHD, maybe the forest industry, but beyond that, that's what I want to do with the platform that I'm going to start in the next couple of months globally. And I believe there is, from a media perspective, how do I get my message out to a lot of people is that I've been successful in podcasting. I've created a media where I can communicate messages that I believe are important from my perspective. Don't need to do it for money necessarily, but at least things that I believe are important, sharing it with other people globally and building a podcast foundation on that basis.
Yeah, I think that podcasting is such a wonderful community. It allows you to access other people and their audiences. And it is a community where there's so much giving, where people host podcasts who also guest on podcasts like yourself. And I find it just an amazing place where people can talk and discuss. And podcasts seem to be growing with popularity. People really are wanting to have someone's voice in their ears, sharing experiences and advice, and what's working for them, and along those lines. And I think it's just, again, just speaks highly to where we are evolving as individuals, as entrepreneurs, as you know uh, you know, stewards in the world. And I think that is yet another great reason why I am so positive about the future, and our place in it, because I think podcasting and technology is elevating us and moving us forward.
So the other thing that I'm going to do, Mickie, is I'm going to send you copies of my books that I have that I showed you. I have 4 of them. I will sign them for you and send them to you. And then maybe share. Scott will have your address or interact with you. The other thing, show us once more your podcast or your how to contact you in terms of the message that you gave us earlier, your website.
Sure. So the website, again, is eReleases.com. All of my social media is on the lower right, including my LinkedIn, which is a great way to reach me personally. And feel free to interact with the website, my staff. It's only editors, no salespeople, and we're pretty helpful to people. And you can chat or call or email us there. And again, that free masterclass that I mentioned is a great place for people wanting to learn a little bit more and maybe do a deep dive into how your business could be given an audit to see what type of newsworthy strategic types of press releases you could be open to doing in the future. And that's at eReleases.com/plan, PLAN.
Excellent, Mickie. And then I will send that to you, and then the books, and then your books are available. Both your books are available on the common websites. And then for all the people watching us that on YouTube, podcasting around the globe, that subscribe to both Mickey's side and my side, it encourages us to have more of these kind of podcasts where you have interesting individuals from around the world interacting on all kinds of different topics, as you noticed, spontaneously. And subscribe to us, like us, share us with others, comment on us as well in terms of what you like about it, or if you have comments for improvement, share those with us as well. And Mickie, it was an amazing podcast. Let's make sure we stay in touch. And again, it was a privilege to have you on my podcast.
Thank you very much.